In a quiet corner of a small village lived an old miller. His age had taken a toll on his body. His hands trembled with weakness, and his back was bent with the weight of years of labor. For as long as anyone could remember, he had spent his life grinding grain for the villagers. His days had been filled with the sound of the millstone turning, the dust of flour in the air, and the satisfaction of knowing that he served his people with honesty and dedication. The villagers respected him deeply, for they knew he never cheated them, never took more than what was fair, and always worked tirelessly. Yet, despite a lifetime of service, the old man had little to show for it in material wealth. He owned no large fields, no cattle, no gold or silver. All he had was his aging mill, his honor, and his 3 sons. The old miller's sons were young men, each different in nature, each with a heart that longed for life in its own way. The eldest, Akbar, was brave and full of energy, but impatience ruled him. He longed to gather wealth quickly, to rise high and be known, even if the path he chose was short and risky. The second son, Babur, was a dreamer. He was neither as bold as his elder brother nor as steady as his younger one. He often avoided hard work and preferred to imagine grand plans rather than put effort into real labor. The youngest, Qasim, was quiet, thoughtful, and patient. He carried his father's wisdom in his heart, often listening more than speaking, and believed in the value of honesty and perseverance. Many times, the old miller gathered his sons around him and reminded them of the truth he had learned through a lifetime of toil. "My sons," he would say, his voice trembling but firm, "remember this hard work and honesty are the greatest treasures any man can possess. If you abandon them, no matter how much wealth you gain, life will betray you in the end." One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of gold, the old man called his sons to sit with him by the mill. His face was lined with age, but his eyes held the same sharpness that once guided his youth. He looked at them with both pride and worry, for he knew his time was drawing near and the burden of the mill would soon rest upon their shoulders. "My sons," he began softly, "I am old and weary. My hands can no longer turn the wheels of this mill, nor can my back bear the weight of heavy sacks. This mill is no longer mine alone, it is yours now. But listen well, for this mill is not only wood and stone. It carries within it the sweat of my brow, the strength of my youth, and the trust of this village. Whoever tends to it with honesty will not only find blessings, but also the prayers of the people. And with those prayers comes true prosperity." Akbar, the eldest, sat forward eagerly, his eyes flashing with restless ambition. "Father," he said, "why waste our time with this old mill? Look at it, its stones are worn, its wood is weak. In the great cities there are merchants who earn wealth by the handful. Let us leave this village behind and build our fortune quickly. We cannot grow rich by grinding grain here." Babur, the middle son, nodded in agreement but added his own thought. "Father, Akbar is right in some way. This mill is too old, too small. Even if we work hard, we will never gain more than a little bread and a humble living. I want to dream bigger, to live a life beyond the limits of this small place." The old miller listened silently, his face calm though his heart felt heavy. He turned his eyes toward Qasim, who had not spoken a word. The youngest son sat quietly, his gaze resting not on the mill, but on his father's weary face. He saw the deep lines of struggle carved into his skin, the tired hands that had provided for them since childhood, and in that moment he felt the truth of his father's words sink deep into his heart. He thought to himself, "Father is right. Wealth without honesty is like sand, it slips through the fingers. Patience and hard work may seem slow, but they are the path that leads to lasting blessings." The father's eyes softened as he looked at Qasim. He did not need to hear the boy speak. He could read the decision in his silence, in the calmness of his expression. With a faint smile, he said, "I see peace in your eyes, my son. Remember, time will test each of you. It is only when trials come that the truth of a man's heart is revealed. Let us see which of you holds to my words." That night, the miller felt both sorrow and hope. He knew his sons stood at the edge of different paths, each leading toward his own destiny. Akbar's heart was already set on the city, where gold gleamed in his imagination. Babur remained caught in the clouds of dreams, unsure of how to make them real. Only Qasim, though silent, had chosen the path of labor and patience. And so, with the dawn of the next day, the brothers parted ways. Akbar gathered what little he had and set out toward the distant city, his heart pounding with ambition. Babur stayed behind, but kept his mind busy with thoughts of easy riches and grand plans. Qasim, on the other hand, rose early and walked to the mill. He placed his hands on the wooden wheel, rough with years of use, and began to work with quiet determination. The sound of the grinding stones echoed once more, steady and sure, carrying forward the legacy of his father. Akbar's journey to the city began with high spirits. He walked with confidence, carrying little more than hope and ambition in his heart. The road was long, but his imagination painted golden pictures. He dreamed of merchant stalls overflowing with silk, spices, and coins. He thought of himself walking proudly through bustling marketplaces, known as a wealthy trader whose name carried weight. When he finally reached the city, the sight dazzled him. Tall buildings lined the streets, shops glittered with goods, and the air rang with the cries of sellers and buyers. Akbar quickly found himself among traders and moneylenders. With his charm and eagerness, he managed to gain their attention. He borrowed money to start a business, promising quick profits. For a while, his ventures seemed successful. A few coins filled his pocket, and he tasted the sweetness of city life. Yet his impatience betrayed him. Instead of steady trade, he risked everything on uncertain deals. He trusted men who were cleverer than him, and in his hunger for quick wealth, he fell into traps. Within months, the little he had gathered slipped away like water through his fingers. Those who had once smiled at him turned their backs when he could not repay his debts. Alone and ashamed, Akbar realized the city was not as kind as he had imagined. With nothing left, he made the long journey back to the village, his dreams broken and his heart heavy. Meanwhile, Babur remained in the village. He did not leave, but neither did he commit himself to the mill. He wandered through the days with ideas that never took shape. Sometimes he thought of buying land, sometimes of opening a shop, but he never followed through. Instead, he borrowed money from neighbors, making promises he could not keep. He spoke of grand plans and riches soon to come, but the villagers began to see through his words. Slowly, trust in him faded. Where once people welcomed him, now they hesitated to deal with him. Loneliness grew around him like a shadow, but he was too lost in his dreams to notice until it was too late. While Akbar struggled in the city and Babur drifted in his illusions, Qasim rose each day before sunrise. The mill became his world. He carried sacks of grain on his shoulders, his clothes covered in flour dust, his hands rough from labor. Yet he never complained. His heart found peace in the rhythm of the turning stones. Villagers came to him with their wheat and barley, and he greeted them with kindness. He charged them fairly, sometimes even less than he could have asked, and returned their grain ground into flour with a smile. Slowly, word spread that Qasim was not only hardworking but also trustworthy. People began to say, Qasim is the true son of his father. As the weeks turned into months, more and more villagers brought their grain to Qasim's mill. Where once the mill stood quiet, now there was a constant hum of activity. Children laughed as they played nearby, women chatted as they waited, and men praised the young miller's honesty. Though his earnings were modest, blessings seemed to flow into his home. His small meals tasted sweeter, his nights were filled with peace, and he walked with the quiet dignity of a man who had chosen the right path. The old miller, though frail and near the end of his days, often sat outside the mill watching his youngest son. His tired eyes glistened with pride. He would whisper to himself, "This boy has carried my legacy. My sweat and labor were not in vain, for he understands what it means to work with honor." Sometimes, when no one was around, he would place his trembling hand on Qasim's shoulder and say softly, "May you always be blessed, my son. You have given me more joy than gold ever could." One evening, Akbar returned to the village, his face weary, his clothes worn from travel. He stood before his father and brothers, ashamed. "I sought wealth in the city," he confessed. "But I found only loss and betrayal. Forgive me, father." The old man's eyes softened with sorrow but also compassion. "My son," he said, "wealth gained without patience is like a mirage in the desert. It vanishes when you draw near." Babur, too, began to realize his folly. The villagers no longer trusted him, and he felt the weight of loneliness pressing on his heart. One night he went to the mill where Kasim was still working under the dim light of a lantern. With tears in his eyes, he said, "Brother, I wasted my time in dreams and false promises. Teach me what Father taught you, for I have lost my way." Kasim, gentle and forgiving, placed his arm around Babur. "It is never too late," he said. "The mill welcomes every hand that works honestly. If you are willing, we can share the burden and rebuild what has been lost." The old miller, hearing his son speak, felt a warmth spread through his weary body. For the first time in years, all three of his sons were together under the roof of the mill. He knew their paths had been different, filled with mistakes and lessons, but he also knew that life had guided them back to the truth. He had always taught that hard work and honesty bring blessings that no riches can match.